I was standing in my garage at 6 in the morning when I realized my snow shovel was missing. And outside, the storm of the century was dumping 3 feet of snow on our little subdivision in Rochester, Minnesota. My name is Yuri Thompson, and I had lived in the Meadowbrook Heights community for exactly 8 months. The house was a modest 3-bedroom colonial that my wife Sandra and I had purchased after my transfer to the Mayo Clinic, where I worked as a surgical nurse. The neighborhood seemed perfect at first, with its neat lawns and friendly waves from neighbors. That was before I truly understood what having a homeowners association meant, and more specifically, before I met Patricia Hendricks, the HOA president who made it her personal mission to make my life a living hell. The snow had started falling around midnight, and the Weather Service had issued a blizzard warning for the entire county. I had specifically placed my heavy-duty snow shovel right by the garage door the night before, along with a bag of salt and my snow blower. The snow blower was still there. The salt was still there. But my shovel, the expensive ergonomic one I had just bought from the hardware store for $75, was gone. I stepped out into the howling wind, my boots immediately sinking into knee-deep snow. The visibility was terrible, maybe 20 feet at best. I could barely see my neighbor's house across the street. But what I could see, clear as day despite the storm, was Patricia Hendricks standing in her driveway 3 houses down, using my distinctive red and yellow shovel to clear her walkway. I knew it was mine because I had written my initials on the handle with a silver permanent marker. Even from this distance, I could see the marking. "You have got to be kidding me," I muttered, pulling my coat tighter and trudging through the snow toward her property. Patricia was a woman in her mid-50s with short blonde hair that she kept in that classic "I want to speak to the manager" style. She wore a puffy purple jacket and matching snow pants, and even in the middle of a blizzard, she had somehow found time to put on makeup. She was the type of person who ironed her jeans and probably alphabetized her spice rack. "Patricia," I shouted over the wind as I approached her driveway. She looked up, and for a split second, I saw recognition and guilt flash across her face. But then her expression hardened into that familiar look of superiority that I had come to know so well over the past few months. "Good morning, Yuri," she said, not stopping her shoveling. "Quite the storm we're having." "That's my shovel," I said, pointing at the tool in her hands. "Excuse me." She clutched the handle tighter, her knuckles going white. "The shovel you're using, it's mine. I bought it 2 weeks ago and I left it in my garage last night. Those are my initials on the handle." Patricia glanced down at the marking and I watched her brain work overtime trying to come up with an explanation. "These are my initials too. Patricia Ann Hendricks, Ph.C. Could easily be mistaken for YT." I stood there, snow accumulating on my shoulders, genuinely amazed at the audacity. "Those letters don't even look similar. That clearly says YT, and I wrote them. Give me my shovel back." "I will do no such thing," Patricia said, turning back to her shoveling. "This is my shovel and I resent the accusation. Furthermore, I'm going to have to write you up for confronting me in an aggressive manner. That violates Section 12 of our HOA bylaws regarding neighborly conduct." This was classic Patricia. In the 8 months I had lived here, she had already sent me 17 violation notices. The first one came 3 days after we moved in, because I had left my garbage visible from the street for more than 2 hours after pickup. Then there were violations for my grass being a 1/4 inch too long, for parking my car on the street overnight when I had a perfectly good driveway, for having a wreath on my door that was not seasonally appropriate, and for countless other microscopic infractions that she seemed to spend every waking hour searching for. "You know what? Fine," I said. "Keep the shovel. I'm calling the police." "The police?" Patricia actually laughed. "Over a shovel? They have bigger things to worry about during a blizzard. Besides, you have no proof this is yours." "I have the receipt at home with the serial number," I said, "and security camera footage of you taking it from my garage." This was a bluff. I didn't have a security camera yet, though I had been meaning to install one after Patricia had sent me a violation notice for leaving my garage door open for excessive periods while I was washing my car. But the bluff worked. Patricia's face went pale. "I did no such thing. This shovel was on the street, abandoned. According to HOA bylaws Section 8, any property left on common areas for more than 24 hours becomes community property that can be disposed of by the HOA board. It wasn't on the street, it was in my garage. That's your word against mine." I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. Patricia's eyes went wide. "What are you doing?" "Reporting a theft," I said calmly. The dispatcher answered, and I explained the situation as clearly as I could. Yes, I understood they were dealing with emergency calls due to the storm. No, I didn't need immediate assistance, but I wanted to file a report. The dispatcher, sounding exhausted, told me they would send an officer when one became available. Patricia had stopped shoveling and was staring at me with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You are making a huge mistake. When the officer arrives, I will tell them exactly how you've been harassing me for months, how you refuse to follow simple community guidelines, how you're a troublemaker who doesn't respect authority." "Looking forward to it," I said, and trudged back to my house. My wife Sandra was in the kitchen making coffee when I came back inside, snow-covered and fuming. "What happened?" she asked, taking in my expression. Sandra was a high school biology teacher at one of the local schools. She had beautiful dark hair and kind eyes, and she was generally the calm one in our relationship. When I got upset about Patricia's constant harassment, she was usually the voice of reason, reminding me to take the high road and not engage. "Patricia stole my shovel. She's using it right now to clear her driveway." Sandra closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "Are you absolutely sure it's yours?" "Positive. It has my initials on it." "And you called the police?" "Yes." She set down her coffee mug. "Yuri, I know Patricia is difficult, but getting law enforcement involved seems extreme. It's just a shovel." "It's not about the shovel," I said, shrugging off my wet coat. "It's about her thinking she can do whatever she wants because she's the HOA president. She's been terrorizing us since we moved in. Remember last month when she threatened to fine us $500 because our Christmas lights were white instead of warm white? Or when she tried to make us remove the bird feeder because it was attracting wildlife? I'm done being pushed around." Sandra walked over and put her hand on my arm. "I get it, I really do, but this is going to escalate things." "Good," I said. "Let them escalate." The police officer arrived about 90 minutes later. The snow was still falling heavily and the roads were nearly impassable. I watched from my window as a squad car slowly made its way down our street, its lights flashing through the white curtain of snow. I went outside to meet him. The officer was a tall man in his 30s with a thick mustache and tired eyes. His name tag read Officer Mike Reeves. "You Yuri Thompson?" he asked. "That's me. Thanks for coming out in this weather." "Well, dispatch said something about a stolen shovel. Normally we wouldn't respond to something like this during a storm, but we're doing wellness checks in the neighborhood anyway, so I figured I'd stop by." He looked around. "So what's going on?" I explained the situation, pointing down the street to Patricia's house. "That woman, Patricia Hendricks, took my snow shovel from my garage sometime last night or early this morning. She's currently using it in her driveway." Officer Reeves rubbed his face. "And you're sure it's your shovel?" "Positive." It has my initials marked on the handle, YT. I can show you the receipt with the serial number if you need it." "Let's go talk to her," he said. We walked down the street together, the officer's boots crunching in the snow. Patricia had finished her driveway and was now working on her front walkway. When she saw us approaching, she straightened up with a big smile. "Officer, thank goodness you're here. I was just about to call you myself. This man has been harassing me all morning." Officer Reeves held up a hand. "Madam, I'm here about a report of stolen property. Can I see that shovel?" Patricia clutched it closer to her body. "This is my shovel. I don't know what he told you, but he's lying. He's been trying to intimidate me for months because I enforce the HOA rules." "Madam, if it's your shovel, you won't mind if I check the handle, right?" Patricia hesitated, and in that moment I knew Officer Reeves saw the truth. He had probably dealt with difficult people like her 1,000 times before. He could read the situation. "I suppose," she said finally, reluctantly handing over the shovel. Officer Reeves examined the handle, his gloved finger tracing over the silver marking. "These initials say YT." "Those are my initials," Patricia said quickly. "Patricia and Hendricks, PH." Officer Reeves looked at her, then at the shovel, then back at her. "Madam, that's not what these letters say. It's a matter of interpretation." "No, madam, it's a matter of fact. These clearly say YT." He looked at me. "You said you have a receipt." "Yes, sir, at my house." "Let's go see it." The three of us walked back to my house, Patricia protesting the entire way. Sandra met us at the door and gave me a look that said she couldn't believe this was actually happening. I went to my office and found the receipt in my filing cabinet. I had saved it because it was an expensive purchase and I wanted to keep track of it for tax purposes. The receipt clearly showed the model number, serial number, and date of purchase. Officer Reeves compared the serial number on the receipt to the number stamped on the shovel's blade. "These match." "That doesn't prove anything," Patricia said. "He could have easily counterfeited that receipt." Officer Reeves turned to her, and I could see his patience was wearing thin. "Madam, why would someone counterfeit a receipt for a $75 shovel?" "Because he's trying to steal my property." "Okay, let me ask you this. Do you have a receipt for this shovel?" Patricia opened her mouth, then closed it. "I bought it years ago. I don't keep receipts that long." "Can you tell me where you bought it?" "I don't remember." "One of the hardware stores in town." "Which one?" "I don't recall. Does it matter?" Officer Reeves sighed. "Madam, I'm going to ask you one more time. Is this your shovel?" Patricia's face was turning red. "Yes, absolutely." "So you're telling me that you bought this exact model shovel, which according to this receipt was only released on the market 6 months ago, years ago. And you're telling me that you, Patricia Ann Hendricks, wrote YT on the handle as your initials, even though those aren't your initials. And you're telling me that the serial number matching Mr. Thompson's receipt is just a coincidence." When he laid it out like that, even Patricia seemed to realize how ridiculous she sounded. But she wasn't backing down. "I want to speak to your supervisor," she said. "Madam, you can file a complaint with the department if you'd like, but right now, I have enough evidence to believe this shovel belongs to Mr. Thompson. I'm going to ask you one final time. Did you take this shovel from his property?" Patricia's jaw clenched. "He left it on the curb." "Abandoned property." "It was in my garage," I interjected. "Was your garage door open?" Officer Reeves asked. I thought back. I had opened it briefly last night to put the snow blower away, maybe for 5 minutes while I moved some things around, but I definitely closed it before I went inside. "So you're saying, madam, that you entered his garage and took this shovel?" The door was open. "I assumed it was abandoned." "Did you ask Mr. Thompson if he wanted the shovel?" "No, but according to our HOA rules, madam, HOA rules don't supersede state law." If you took property from someone's garage without permission, that's theft. The color drained from Patricia's face. Theft? That's absurd. This is a neighborhood dispute over a shovel. I'm the HOA president. I was maintaining community standards. By taking someone's personal property. Officer Reeves pulled out his citation book. Look, I'm trying to give you the benefit of the doubt here. This seems like a misunderstanding that got out of hand. If you just apologize to Mr. Thompson and acknowledge this is his shovel, we can all move on with our day. I watched Patricia's face go through a series of expressions. Pride, anger, embarrassment, and finally, stubborn defiance. I knew what was coming before she even opened her mouth. I will not apologize because I did nothing wrong. This is my shovel, and I'm filing a formal complaint against this officer for harassment and against Mr. Thompson for making false police reports. Officer Reeves closed his eyes briefly, like he was praying for patience. Then he opened his citation book. Madam, I'm issuing you a citation for petty theft under Minnesota Statute 609.52. The value of the item is under $500, so this is a misdemeanor. You'll need to appear in court on the date listed on the citation, or you can pay the fine. This is outrageous, Patricia shrieked. I'm calling my lawyer. I'm calling the mayor. I'm calling the chief of police. You'll be hearing about this. Officer Reeves handed her the citation with the kind of weary professionalism that comes from years of dealing with difficult people. That's your right, madam. Here's your citation. Mr. Thompson, this is your shovel. He handed me back my property. I suggest you both keep your distance from each other going forward. Patricia snatched the citation from his hand, her face purple with rage. She stormed off toward her house without another word, her boots leaving angry tracks in the snow. After Officer Reeves left, Sandra and I stood in our garage, looking at the recovered shovel. That was insane, Sandra said. That was Patricia, I replied. She actually got cited for theft. Over a shovel. Over stealing a shovel, I corrected. There's a difference. Sandra shook her head. This is going to get worse, you know that, right? She's not going to let this go. Probably not. But maybe now she'll think twice before messing with our stuff. I was wrong about that. Patricia Hendricks was not the type of person who learned lessons or thought twice about anything. If I thought getting her cited by the police would make her back off, I was severely mistaken. The next morning, after the storm had passed and the city plows had made their rounds, I woke up to find a notice taped to my front door. It was an official HOA violation, printed on Patricia's official HOA letterhead. Violation of community standards. Failure to maintain driveway in accordance with snow removal timeline. As per HOA bylaws section 15.3, all driveways must be cleared within 12 hours of snowfall cessation. Your driveway currently shows evidence of snow accumulation. Fine, $200. Failure to remedy within 24 hours will result in additional fines of $50 per day. I stared at the notice in disbelief. The snow had stopped falling less than 6 hours ago. The sun had barely risen. I looked at my driveway, which had maybe 3 inches of snow on it. Meanwhile, I could see at least 5 other houses on the street with similar or worse conditions. Sandra read the notice over my shoulder. She's retaliating, obviously. What are you going to do? Shovel the driveway, I guess, and document everything. I spent the next hour clearing my driveway with my recovered shovel, making sure to do a thorough job. I even cleared the sidewalk in front of my house, though technically that wasn't required by the HOA. Then I took photos with my phone time-stamped, showing my cleared property. 2 days later, I received another notice. This time it was for improper snow disposal resulting in ice accumulation on common areas. Apparently, When I shoveled my driveway, some of the snow had ended up near the curb, and Patricia was claiming this violated Section 15.7 of the bylaws. Another $200 fine. I called an emergency meeting with the HOA board. According to the bylaws, any homeowner had the right to contest a violation by presenting their case to the full board. The board consisted of Patricia as president, plus 4 other members: Gerald Morrison, an elderly retired accountant; Lisa Chen, a lawyer who worked downtown; Tom Bradley, who owned a local insurance agency; and Michelle Keller, a stay-at-home mom with 3 kids. The meeting was held in the community center, a small building near the neighborhood entrance that was used for HOA meetings and the occasional resident event. When I arrived, the 5 board members were already seated at a table at the front of the room. Patricia sat in the center, looking smug. The others looked uncomfortable, like they knew this was going to be awkward. "Good evening, Yuri," Patricia said formally. "You've requested to contest some recent violations." "Yes," I said, taking a seat in the front row of folding chairs. "I received 2 violation notices in the past 3 days, both related to snow removal. I believe these are retaliatory and not legitimate violations." Patricia's eyebrows shot up. "Retaliatory? That's a serious accusation." "So is falsely fining residents," I countered. The first notice claimed I didn't clear my driveway within 12 hours of snowfall cessation. I have time-stamped photos showing I cleared it within 6 hours. The second notice claimed improper snow disposal, but every single house on our street has snow piled near the curb. I have photos of that too. I pulled out my phone and showed the board the pictures I had taken. Gerald and Lisa leaned forward to look. Tom nodded slowly. Michelle bit her lip. "The photos show compliance," Lisa said carefully. "I don't see a violation here, Patricia." Patricia's face hardened. "The photos don't show the full scope of the problem. I personally inspected his property and found multiple issues." "What issues specifically?" Tom asked. "The snow was not properly distributed. It was piled in a manner that created a hazard." "A hazard how?" I asked. "It could melt and refreeze, creating ice." "That's true of literally all snow," I pointed out. "That's how snow works." Gerald cleared his throat. "Patricia, I think we need to be reasonable here. Looking at these photos, I don't see evidence of a violation. And if we're going to enforce this rule, we need to enforce it consistently across the neighborhood." "I am enforcing it consistently," Patricia insisted. "Other violations will be addressed in due course." "But they haven't been," I said. "I've been living here for 8 months, and in that time, I've received 17 violation notices. My neighbor across the street has received 0. The house next to mine has received 1. Why am I being singled out?" "You're not being singled out. You're simply violating more rules. Or you're targeting me because I reported you for theft." The room went silent. Patricia's face turned red and I could see her hands shaking slightly. Lisa spoke up. "Is that what this is about? The police citation?" "I don't know what you're referring to," Patricia said coldly. "Come on, Patricia. Everyone on the street knows what happened. Yuri called the police on you for taking his shovel and you got cited for theft. Now suddenly he's getting multiple violations for things that don't seem like actual violations." "I resent the implication," Patricia said. "I take my duties as HOA president very seriously. I enforce the rules fairly and without bias." Michelle finally spoke up, her voice quiet. "I think we should void these violations. They don't seem legitimate." "Seconded," Gerald said. Patricia looked like she wanted to explode. "This is ridiculous. I'm the president of this HOA and I will not be undermined by—" "We're not undermining you," Tom interrupted. "We're following the process. Yuri contested the violations, presented evidence, and we're voting on it. all in favor of voiding the violations. 4 hands went up. Patricia sat with her arms crossed, glaring at everyone. Motion passes, Tom said. The violations are voided. Yuri, you don't owe any fines. Thank you, I said, standing up. Patricia stood too. This meeting is adjourned, she said sharply, gathering her papers and storming out. The other board members looked at each other awkwardly. Sorry about this, Lisa said to me. She's been getting more difficult lately. We're trying to keep her in check. I appreciate the support, I said. I just want to live in my house in peace. Understandable, Gerald said. Hopefully this settles things down. It did not settle things down. Over the next 2 weeks, Patricia escalated her campaign against me. She sent a letter to every house in the neighborhood claiming I was making the community unsafe by filing frivolous police reports. She started a post on the neighborhood Facebook page warning people about troublesome residents who don't respect community values. She even filed a formal complaint with the county about my supposed snow removal violations, though the county dismissed it as an internal HOA matter. But her biggest move came when she scheduled a special HOA meeting to vote on changing the bylaws. Specifically, she wanted to add a new rule that would give the HOA board the authority to levy fines for behavior that brings disrepute to the community, which would include making false police reports against other residents. The meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday evening, and Sandra and I both attended. So did about 30 other residents, which was unusually high turnout. Word had gotten around about the ongoing feud, and people were curious. Patricia called the meeting to order, standing at the front of the room with a microphone. "Thank you all for coming," she said. "We're here tonight to discuss some important amendments to our community bylaws. As you all know, we pride ourselves on being a peaceful, respectful neighborhood. Unfortunately, we've had some incidents recently that threaten that peace." I could feel people's eyes drifting toward me. "Therefore," Patricia continued, "the board is proposing a new bylaw that would allow us to fine residents who engage in behavior that damages our community's reputation. This includes making false accusations, filing frivolous police reports, and other actions that create unnecessary conflict." A woman in the back raised her hand. "Can you give specific examples?" Patricia smiled tightly. "Well, for instance, if someone were to falsely accuse another resident of theft and waste police resources during a blizzard when officers should be responding to real emergencies, that would qualify." "But what if the accusation isn't false?" asked a man I recognized from 2 streets over. "What if someone actually did steal something? Then there would be appropriate evidence and consequences," Patricia said. "In this hypothetical situation, there was no theft, just a misunderstanding that was blown out of proportion." I stood up. "Can I say something?" Patricia's smile vanished. "This isn't an open forum. This is a board meeting." Lisa leaned over and whispered something to Patricia. Patricia's jaw clenched, but she nodded. "Fine, you have 2 minutes." I walked to the front of the room. "Thank you. I want to address the elephant in the room. Patricia is talking about me. She's proposing this new rule because I called the police when she took my snow shovel from my garage and used it as her own. The officer who responded determined that she had taken my property without permission and issued her a citation for petty theft. That's a matter of public record." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Now Patricia is trying to change the HOA rules so she can fine me for reporting her crime. But think about what that means for all of us. If this rule passes, any time you have a legitimate dispute with another resident or, God forbid, with someone on the HOA board, you could be fined just for standing up for yourself. This isn't about protecting the community. This is about retaliation and control. More murmurs, louder this time. I could see people nodding. Patricia grabbed the microphone. That is a gross mischaracterization of the situation. The officer issued a citation because he was pressured and didn't have all the facts. I never stole anything. The shovel was found property. Found in my garage, I said. The garage door was open for 5 minutes. You can't prove that. Lisa stood up. Okay, this is getting out of hand. Patricia, I think we need to table this discussion. We can't make major bylaw changes when there's this much personal conflict involved. I second that motion, Gerald said quickly. I haven't called for a motion yet, Patricia snapped. I'm calling for one now, Lisa said. I move that we table this discussion until cooler heads prevail. All in favor, 3 other hands went up. Patricia stood alone. The motion passes, Lisa said. Meeting adjourned. Patricia looked like she might spontaneously combust. She grabbed her papers, threw them in her bag, and marched out of the community center without another word. Several residents came up to me afterwards to offer support. A few shared their own stories of unreasonable violations and Patricia's overbearing enforcement. One man told me he had been fined $300 because his house number wasn't perfectly centered on his mailbox post. Another woman said Patricia had threatened her with daily fines because she had wind chimes that Patricia claimed were too noisy. Someone needs to do something about her, the woman said. She's making everyone miserable. What can we do? I asked. She's the president. We can vote her out, said the man with the mailbox violation. The bylaws allow for a vote of no confidence if we get enough signatures. How many signatures? Sandra asked. 30% of homeowners, he replied. There are 82 homes in the neighborhood, so we'd need 25 signatures. I'll sign, said the woman with the wind chimes. Me too, said another resident. Let's do it, I said. Over the next week, we organized a petition to remove Patricia as HOA president. We went door to door, explaining the situation and asking for signatures. Most people were sympathetic, though some were hesitant to get involved. A few told us horror stories about Patricia that made my situation seem tame by comparison. There was the couple who had been fined $500 because they painted their front door a shade of blue that Patricia deemed not historically appropriate for the neighborhood aesthetic. Never mind that several other houses had colorful doors. When they challenged it, Patricia had photos taken of their property every single day and sent them violation notices for things like visible garden hose and recycling been placed on curb 6 hours before pickup instead of 4 hours. There was the elderly man who had been harassed about his American flag because it was slightly larger than the size specified in the bylaws. Patricia had measured it personally and sent him a violation notice demanding he replace it with a smaller flag within 30 days or face daily fines. There was the young family who had been fined because their children's outdoor toys were visible from the street when the kids left a soccer ball on the lawn. The stories went on and on. Patricia had systematically bullied and harassed residents for years, and people were fed up. Within 5 days, we had collected 43 signatures, well over the required threshold. According to the bylaws, once we submitted the petition, a special election had to be held within 30 days. The board would vote on whether to remove Patricia from her position, and if she was removed, a new president would be elected by the residents. We submitted the petition at the next regular board meeting. Patricia's face went white when she saw how many signatures we had collected. "This is a coup," she said, her voice shaking. "You're all trying to sabotage me because you don't like being held accountable." "This is democracy," Lisa said gently. "The residents have the right to petition for new leadership. It's in the bylaws that I helped write." "Then you should have written in protections against removal," Tom said dryly. Patricia looked at the 4 other board members. "You're all turning against me. After everything I've done for this community." "Patricia, you've done good work in some areas," Gerald said diplomatically. "But you've also been heavy-handed with enforcement. A lot of residents feel targeted and harassed. Maybe it's time to step back and let someone else take the lead." "I will not resign," Patricia said firmly. "If they want me out, they'll have to vote me out. And when this election happens, everyone will see that it's just a small group of malcontents trying to destroy the structure and order of this community." "So we'll have the election," Lisa said. 3 weeks from tonight, all residents will be notified by mail and email." Patricia gathered her things and left without another word. The next 3 weeks were tense. Patricia went into overdrive, sending lengthy emails to every resident explaining why she should stay on as president. She detailed all the improvements she had overseen during her tenure. The new playground equipment, the repaved streets, the community garden, the holiday decorations. She portrayed herself as a dedicated public servant being attacked by ungrateful residents who wanted to turn the neighborhood into chaos. She also went on the offensive against me specifically. She sent an email blast with the subject line, "The Truth About Yuri Thompson," in which she claimed I was a serial rule breaker who wanted to eliminate all standards so I could do whatever I wanted. She included photos of minor issues with my property, most of which were completely normal things like leaves on my lawn or a small branch that had fallen from a tree. In response, several residents who had signed the petition sent their own emails sharing their experiences with Patricia's overzealous enforcement. The neighborhood Facebook page became a battleground, with some people defending Patricia and others calling for her removal. Throughout all this, I just tried to live my life. I went to work at the hospital, came home, spent time with Sandra, and kept my property meticulously maintained to avoid giving Patricia any ammunition. I still had my shovel, which had become something of a symbol of resistance against Patricia's tyranny. More than one neighbor made jokes about the shovel that started a revolution. The election took place on a cold evening in late February. Nearly every homeowner in the neighborhood showed up to vote, which was unprecedented for an HOA election. The community center was packed. The voting process was simple. Each household got one ballot with 2 questions. Should Patricia Hendricks be removed as HOA president? And if yes, who should replace her? Lisa had agreed to run for president, as had Tom. Gerald had declined, saying he was too old for the drama. Patricia stood at the front of the room looking defiant as people filed in to vote. She had dressed up for the occasion in a navy blue suit and pearls, like she was running for Congress instead of HOA president. When it was my turn to vote, I marked yes for removing Patricia and Lisa Chen for the new president. I folded my ballot and placed it in the box. The votes were counted by Gerald and Michelle, who were serving as neutral election officials. It took about 45 minutes to tally everything. The room buzzed with nervous conversation while we waited. Finally, Gerald stood up to announce the results. For the question of whether to remove Patricia Hendricks as HOA president, the results are 68 yes votes, 11 no votes, and 3 abstentions. The room erupted in applause and cheers. Patricia stood frozen, her face pale. Gerald continued. For the election of new president, Lisa Chen received 52 votes, Tom Bradley received 24 votes, and there were 6 write-in candidates with various votes. More applause. Lisa stood and waved awkwardly, looking both pleased and overwhelmed. Therefore, effective immediately, Patricia Hendricks is removed as HOA president, and Lisa Chen will assume the position. Patricia finally moved. She walked to the front of the room, grabbed the microphone from Gerald's hand and spoke in a voice dripping with bitterness. "You've all made a terrible mistake. This community will fall apart without proper leadership. When your property values decline because people stop maintaining standards, don't come crying to me." She dropped the microphone, which made a loud feedback screech, and stormed out. The room was silent for a moment, then someone started clapping. Soon everyone was applauding, not mockingly but with genuine relief. Lisa took the microphone. "Thank you all for your trust. I promise to lead this HOA fairly and reasonably. We'll maintain our community standards without harassment or targeting. And my first act as president is to void all outstanding violations that were issued in the past 6 months. We're starting fresh." More applause. I felt Sandra squeeze my hand. "We did it," she whispered. "We did," I agreed. I thought that was the end of the story. Patricia had been removed from power, and things could finally get back to normal. But I should have known Patricia wouldn't go quietly. 2 days after the election, I received a certified letter from a law firm downtown. Patricia was suing me for defamation, harassment, and emotional distress. She was seeking $50,000 in damages. The lawsuit claimed that I had orchestrated a malicious campaign to destroy her reputation and had spread false and damaging allegations about her. It cited the petition for her removal as evidence of defamation, as well as my statements at various HOA meetings. I immediately called a lawyer. His name was Robert Martinez, and he specialized in civil litigation. I met with him at his office and showed him all my documentation. The police report from the snow shovel incident, Patricia's citation for theft, copies of all the violation notices she had sent me, emails, photos, everything. Robert reviewed it all carefully, then leaned back in his chair. "This is a frivolous lawsuit. You didn't defame her. You reported a crime, which is your right as a citizen. You organized a petition using the proper HOA procedures, and nothing you said about her was false. It's all documented. So she has no case. She has no case. But that doesn't mean it won't be annoying and expensive to deal with. We'll file a motion to dismiss, and I'm confident the judge will grant it, but you'll need to pay legal fees in the meantime." "How much are we talking?" "Probably $3,000 to $5,000 to get this dismissed. If by some miracle it goes to trial, which I doubt, it could be more." I felt sick. Even though I would probably win, I was going to have to spend thousands of dollars defending myself because Patricia couldn't accept defeat. "There is one silver lining," Robert said. "If the judge determines this lawsuit is frivolous or filed in bad faith, we can ask for sanctions. That means Patricia would have to pay your legal fees and possibly a fine." "What are the chances of that, given the facts here?" "Pretty good, actually. Judges don't like it when people abuse the legal system for revenge." We filed our motion to dismiss, and a hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. In the meantime, Patricia continued her campaign of harassment in other ways. She couldn't send HOA violations anymore, but she could make life difficult in other ways. She filed complaints with the city about my property, claiming various code violations. City inspectors came out twice and found nothing wrong either time. She posted negative reviews about me on neighborhood forums, though they were quickly removed by moderators for violating community guidelines. She even tried to get me fired by calling the Mayo Clinic and claiming I had threatened her, though the hospital's HR department saw through it immediately. It was exhausting and infuriating, but I documented everything. Every complaint, every false report, every harassing action went into a file that my lawyer was compiling. The hearing for the motion to dismiss finally arrived. It was held in the Olmsted County Courthouse in downtown Rochester. Sandra came with me for support. Patricia was there with her lawyer, a sour-faced man in an expensive suit. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Judge Barbara Stein. She had a reputation for being no-nonsense and efficient. She reviewed our motion and Patricia's lawsuit, then asked Patricia's lawyer to explain the basis for the defamation claim. Patricia's lawyer stood and gave a long-winded speech about how I had damaged Patricia's reputation and caused her severe emotional distress by accusing her of theft and organizing a campaign to remove her from the HOA. When he finished, Judge Stein looked unimpressed. "Counsel, your client was cited by police for theft. That's a matter of public record. How can stating a factual matter be defamation?" "The citation was unjustified," Patricia's lawyer said. "The officer was biased and didn't have all the facts." "Did your client contest the citation?" "No, Your Honor, she paid the fine." "So she admitted guilt by paying the fine and now she's claiming the accusation was false. That doesn't make sense." Patricia's lawyer floundered. "She paid the fine to avoid further hassle, not as an admission of guilt." Judge Stein turned to my lawyer. "Mr. Martinez, your response." Robert stood. "Your Honor, this lawsuit is clearly retaliatory. My client reported a crime, which is his right and duty as a citizen. He participated in lawful HOA proceedings to remove someone he felt was abusing her authority. Everything he said about Miss Hendricks was true and documented. This is a textbook case of a SLAPP suit designed to punish someone for exercising their legal rights. SLAPP stood for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation. It was a lawsuit filed to intimidate and silence critics by burdening them with legal costs. Judge Stein nodded slowly. "I'm inclined to agree. Miss Hendricks, do you have anything to say?" Patricia stood up, even though her lawyer tried to stop her. "Your Honor, this man has ruined my life. I dedicated years to serving my community, and he destroyed my reputation over a simple misunderstanding. I lost my position, I've been humiliated, and I've suffered tremendous stress. Someone needs to hold him accountable." "Madam, you were removed from your HOA position by a vote of your neighbors. That's not Mr. Thompson's fault. And regarding the theft citation, you took his property without permission. That's theft under Minnesota law, regardless of your intentions. But I thought it was abandoned." "Did you ask him?" "No, but then you made an assumption and took something that didn't belong to you. That's theft." Judge Stein looked at her lawyer. "Counsel, I'm granting the motion to dismiss. This lawsuit has no merit. Furthermore, I'm issuing sanctions. Miss Hendricks will pay Mr. Thompson's legal fees and a fine of $5,000 to the court for filing a frivolous lawsuit." Patricia gasped. "That's not fair, madam. You sued someone for telling the truth about a crime you committed." "That's not just unfair, it's an abuse of the legal system. You're lucky I'm not holding you in contempt." Judge Stein banged her gavel. "Case dismissed." Patricia's lawyer quickly ushered her out of the courtroom before she could say anything else. I sat there in shock, hardly able to believe it was over. Robert grinned and clapped me on the shoulder. "Congratulations, you won. She has to pay my legal fees. Every penny. I'll send her the bill." Sandra hugged me. "It's finally over." "I hope so," I said. The sanction and legal fees ended up costing Patricia nearly $12,000. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she was furious and had considered appealing, but her lawyer had advised her that an appeal would only cost more money with no chance of success. Life in the neighborhood slowly returned to normal. Lisa proved to be an excellent HOA president. She enforced the rules fairly and reasonably, sending friendly reminders instead of threatening violation notices. She organized community events that people actually wanted to attend. The whole atmosphere of the neighborhood improved. Patricia became something of a recluse. She rarely left her house, and when she did, she avoided eye contact with everyone. Some people felt sorry for her, but most were just relieved she was no longer in charge. I finally got around to installing security cameras on my property, including one pointing at my garage. I wasn't taking any chances. Several months after the lawsuit was dismissed, I was outside washing my car on a Saturday afternoon when I saw Patricia walking down the street. She was coming back from checking her mailbox, and she would have to walk past my house to get back to hers. I considered going inside to avoid an awkward encounter, but decided against it. I had nothing to be ashamed of or afraid of. I kept washing my car. As Patricia passed by, she stopped. I braced myself for another confrontation. "Nice day," she said quietly. I looked at her, surprised. "Yeah, it is." She stood there for a moment like she wanted to say something else. Then she nodded and continued walking. That was the closest thing to an apology or acknowledgement I ever got from her. It wasn't much, but I supposed it was something. Sandra came outside with 2 glasses of lemonade. Was that Patricia? Yeah. What did she want? Nothing really, just commented on the weather. That's progress, I guess. Maybe, I said, taking the lemonade. Or maybe she's planning her next move. Don't be paranoid. I'm not paranoid, I'm cautious. There's a difference. But as the months passed with no further incidents, I gradually relaxed. Patricia really did seem to have given up her vendetta. The neighborhood settled into a peaceful rhythm. The HOA functioned smoothly under Lisa's leadership. My property remained violation-free, not because I was bending over backward to comply with every tiny rule, but because the rules were being enforced reasonably. One evening in late summer, there was a block party in the neighborhood. It had become an annual tradition, and this year's event was particularly well attended. People brought food and drinks, kids played in the street, and there was a general sense of community that had been missing during Patricia's reign. I was manning the grill flipping burgers when Lisa came over. "Great turnout," she said. "Yeah, this is nice. Feels like a real neighborhood." "I wanted to thank you," Lisa said, "for starting the petition. I know it wasn't easy and you took a lot of heat for it, but you did the right thing." "I just wanted my shovel back," I joked. Lisa laughed. "The shovel heard round the world, that's what people are calling it. Are they really?" "Okay, no, but they should be. That shovel incident was the catalyst for real change here." I looked around at all my neighbors laughing and talking, at the kids running around with sparklers as the sun set, at Sandra chatting with a group of women by the dessert table. "I guess it was worth it," I said. "Definitely worth it." As the evening wore on and the party wound down, I found myself thinking about the whole saga. It had started so simply. A stolen shovel during a snowstorm. But it had escalated into something much larger, exposing years of abuse and mismanagement by someone who had let a small amount of power go to their head. I learned a lot during those months. I learned that standing up for yourself matters, even when it's uncomfortable. I learned that documentation is crucial when dealing with unreasonable people. I learned that communities function better when they're based on mutual respect rather than fear and intimidation. And I learned that sometimes the smallest incidents can spark the biggest changes. My snow shovel, that $75 tool with my initials on the handle, still sat in my garage. I used it regularly during the winter months, and every time I picked it up, I remembered everything that had happened. It was more than just a shovel now. It was a symbol of standing your ground and fighting back against petty tyranny. Patricia Hendricks eventually moved away from the neighborhood about a year after losing her position. I heard she bought a condo in a building with no HOA. I hoped she found peace there, though I suspected she would find something new to be controlling about. Some people were just wired that way. As for me, I continued living in my house in Meadowbrook Heights, enjoying the community I had helped make better. Sandra and I made good friends with several neighbors. We hosted game nights and barbecues. We participated in HOA meetings when important issues came up, but mostly we just lived our lives without fear of arbitrary fines or harassment. The whole experience taught me that home ownership is about more than just having a place to live. It's about being part of a community, and communities require vigilance to keep them healthy. When someone abuses their authority, whether it's a HOA president or anyone else, staying silent only enables the behavior. Speaking up, even when it's hard, even when it costs you time and money and stress, is sometimes necessary. And all of that started because Patricia Hendricks stole my snow shovel during a blizzard, and a police officer was willing to write her a citation for theft, instead of dismissing it as a neighborhood squabble. That officer, Officer Mike Reeves, probably had no idea what chain of events he was setting in motion when he filled out that citation. But his willingness to take the complaint seriously and enforce the law fairly made all the difference. I ran into him once at a coffee shop downtown, several months after everything had settled down. I recognized his face and went over to thank him. "You probably don't remember me," I said, "but you responded to a call about a stolen snow shovel last winter." His face lit up with recognition. "Oh yeah, the HOA lady. How did that turn out?" I gave him the abbreviated version of events: the HOA drama, the petition, Patricia's removal, the lawsuit, the sanctions, everything. Officer Reeves laughed and shook his head. "All that over a shovel. I'm not surprised, though. People get crazy about the weirdest things. I'm glad you fought back. Too many people just take it when someone with a little authority starts pushing them around." "Well, thank you for taking it seriously. You could have just told us to work it out ourselves." "I could have, but theft is theft. Doesn't matter if it's a $75 shovel or a car. When someone takes your property without permission, that's a crime." I wasn't going to ignore it just because she was on some HOA power trip. We chatted for a few more minutes, then went our separate ways. But that conversation reinforced what I had learned. The system works when people do their jobs with integrity. Officer Reeves could have dismissed my complaint as trivial. The judge could have let Patricia's frivolous lawsuit proceed just to avoid the hassle. The other HOA board members could have sided with Patricia to avoid conflict. But everyone involved chose to do the right thing, and justice prevailed. As I write this now, 2 years after the snow shovel incident, life is good. The neighborhood is thriving. The HOA functions smoothly. My property has never looked better, not because I'm afraid of violations, but because I actually enjoy maintaining it now that it's not being used as ammunition against me. I still have that snow shovel. It's a bit worn now, with scratches on the blade and the handle showing signs of use. The initials YT are fading but still visible. I've had people offer to buy it from me as a neighborhood memento, but I always decline. That shovel is staying with me. Sandra jokes that I should have it mounted on a plaque with a little inscription: "The shovel that defeated a HOA tyrant." I laugh every time she says it, but honestly, I've considered it. Not because I'm proud of the conflict, but because I'm proud that I stood up for myself when it mattered. The story of Patricia Hendricks and the stolen snow shovel has become neighborhood legend. New residents hear about it during their welcome orientation. It's told at block parties and holiday gatherings. Some details have been embellished over time, like the story that Patricia tried to blame me for a city-wide snowplow shortage, or that she showed up to court in a full HOA presidential sash. Those things didn't happen, but they're funny stories nonetheless. The real story is simpler and more important: A person in authority abused that authority for years. Someone finally stood up to her. The community rallied behind that person. The system worked, justice was served, and a neighborhood became a better place to live. It all started with a stolen snow shovel and a police officer who gave a citation for theft instead of looking the other way. Sometimes the smallest acts of accountability can have the biggest impact. And that's the story of how Patricia Hendricks stole my snow shovel during a storm and ended up losing everything that mattered to her because she refused to admit she was wrong. It's a cautionary tale about power, pride, and the importance of treating people with basic respect and decency. Every winter when the first snow falls, I make sure my shovel is securely in my garage, door locked. Not because I'm worried about Patricia anymore, but because I learned my lesson about leaving valuable items unsecured. And every winter, when I clear my driveway and help my neighbors clear theirs, I'm reminded that communities work best when people help each other instead of policing each other. The Meadowbrook Heights HOA is now a model for how homeowners associations should function. Other neighborhoods have reached out to Lisa asking for advice on governance and enforcement. She always tells them the same thing. Treat residents like adults, enforce rules fairly and consistently, and remember that your job is to maintain the community, not control it. As for what became of Patricia, I heard she took a job at a local business doing administrative work. I hope she learned something from the experience, though I have my doubts. Some people never learn, but that's not my problem anymore. My problem now is deciding what to make for dinner and whether to watch the game tonight or finish the book I've been reading. Normal problems. Good problems. The kind of problems you have when you're not being harassed by a power-hungry HOA president. Life is quiet now, and I've never been more grateful for boring, peaceful normalcy. No violation notices, no threats of fines, no police reports or lawsuits, just life in a nice neighborhood where people get along and respect each other. And it all comes back to that snow shovel, sitting in my garage, a reminder that sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even when it's inconvenient and stressful and everyone tells you to just let it go. Because letting it go would have meant letting Patricia continue her reign of terror over the neighborhood. Fighting back meant standing up not just for myself, but for every resident who had been bullied and harassed and fined for petty violations. The shovel is just a tool, metal and plastic and wood. But what it represents is the power of saying no when someone tries to push you around. It represents the importance of documentation and following proper procedures. It represents the value of community solidarity when facing a common problem. And most importantly, it represents the simple truth that theft is theft, whether it's committed by a random stranger or by the president of your homeowners association. The law applies to everyone equally, and when someone thinks they are above the law because of their position or authority, they need to be reminded otherwise. Officer Mike Reeves reminded Patricia of that when he wrote her that citation. Judge Barbara Stein reminded her again when she dismissed the frivolous lawsuit and imposed sanctions. And the residents of Meadowbrook Heights delivered the final reminder when they voted her out with an overwhelming majority. These days, when I meet new neighbors moving into the community, I tell them about the HOA and how it functions. I tell them about Lisa's fair leadership and the reasonable enforcement of rules. I tell them about the community events and the friendly atmosphere. And sometimes, if they seem interested, I tell them about Patricia and the snow shovel. Their reactions are always the same. Disbelief that someone would go to such lengths over such a small thing, followed by relief that the situation was resolved. And I always tell them the same thing. It wasn't really about the shovel. It was about power and respect and holding people accountable. That's the real lesson of this whole saga. The shovel was just the catalyst. The real issue was years of accumulated resentment toward an authoritarian leader who had made everyone's life miserable in the name of maintaining community standards. The shovel gave people a clear, simple example of Patricia's overreach that everyone could understand. It cut through all the complexity of HOA bylaws and violation notices and went straight to the core issue. She took something that didn't belong to her and refused to admit it. Everything that followed, the petition and the election and the lawsuit and the sanctions, all flowed from that one simple act of theft and Officer Reeves' decision to treat it as what it was, a crime. I'm grateful it happened, even though it was stressful and expensive and time-consuming. Because if Patricia hadn't stolen my shovel, she'd probably still be HOA president, making people miserable and sending out violation notices like confetti. The neighborhood would still be tense and unhappy. People would still be living in fear of arbitrary fines and harassment. Instead, we have a thriving community where people actually enjoy living, where kids play in the streets and neighbors help each other, and the HOA serves its intended purpose of maintaining property values and common areas without making everyone's life miserable. That's worth fighting for. That's worth the stress and the legal fees and the confrontations. And I'd do it all again in a heartbeat if I had to, but hopefully I won't have to. Hopefully, Patricia's tenure as HOA president will serve as a cautionary tale for future board members about what happens when you let power go to your head. Hopefully, Lisa and whoever comes after her will continue to lead with fairness and common sense. And hopefully, my snow shovel will live out the rest of its days doing nothing more exciting than clearing snow from my driveway, though knowing my luck, that's probably too much to hope for. There's always another Patricia waiting in the wings, ready to abuse whatever small amount of authority they can get their hands on. But at least now I know how to deal with them. Document everything, follow the rules, stand your ground, and don't be afraid to call the police when someone commits a crime, even if that crime is just stealing a snow shovel during a blizzard. Especially if that crime is stealing a snow shovel during a blizzard, because that's where it starts, with small violations and power trips and thinking the rules don't apply to you. And if nobody stands up and says no, it only gets worse from there. I said no. My neighbors said no. The legal system said no. And together, we made our community better, all because of a $75 snow shovel and a police officer who took theft seriously, no matter how petty it seemed.